it's Jane at Fired View, the pottery painting and craft studio in Whatney Dale, Preston. So I'm going to show you how to make a bowl from a ball of clay by hand this afternoon. So this is going to be like in real time rather than fast forward, so you can hear what I'm saying. And I might be standing up and down, so I might disappear out of view, but hopefully you'll still see the clay, and I'll move the camera up and down as need be. So if you start off with a lump of clay, if it's flat you need to knock it into a ball, and to do that you need to use the palm of your hand like that and knock it into a circular ball. If you wanted a square bowl, if you knocked it into a square shape, this flat sides, you could then make it into a square shaped ball. So I'm kind of heading into a round shape, and just keep working it gently. You just got to go with the flat clay and just knock it into shape with your hand. This was partially flattened on the top anyway, so I'm just hanging on to that so we can keep that shape. You want a flat base, so just give it a good tap on your board. If you work on a wooden board then it won't stick. You can always put some material on it as well. Just give it a good tap. Then when you're happy with that, if you pop your fingers in the clay, your thumbs, and push it out, so I'm pushing it in and away from myself, down and away, and just keep gently, very gently, take your time. If you've got long nails, be really careful that you don't bend them. Let's tilt that a little bit more so you can see. So I'm just pushing it away, so I'm putting my thumbs in there and I'm pushing away from me along the clay. So I'm gradually making it slightly deeper with each push, and I'm going to just try and gently keep the sides the same thickness. So this technique is called thumb pot or squeeze pot. It just depends where you are in the UK to the terminology. It kind of was just evolved over time with the potters in the different areas of the country. So if you feel between your fingers and thumb like that, how you can see how thick it is, or feel how thick it is. So I don't want too thick a base, so I'm just going to keep pushing my thumbs in. You can see inside there, I'm just pushing it away a little bit at a time. You just don't want to go gung-ho at it or too hard too fast, because you don't want to end up with a hole in the bottom of your pot, nor do you want the base to be too thin. It wants to be quite no thinner really than I suppose half a centimetre up to a centimetre thickness when you're making it by hand, so it's kind of nice and sturdy. So I'm going to stay there with the thickness there, and I'm just going to just bring it back into view a little bit, and I'm just pushing it away here. So I want it a little bit wider, so you can see at the moment the sides are rather thick. It's a very heavy chunky pot, which is fine, but I'd like it to be a little bit thinner. So it's very touchy-feely, very tactile to do this. So when you're working with it, don't go squeezing too mad. You will feel with your fingers where it's a little bit thinner, where it's a little bit thicker. So just keep squeezing it gently. You can bring it upwards a little bit if you want it a little bit deeper. So this technique allows you a bowl roughly about the depth of your thumb, hence the name thumb pot. So I'm just going to push it out a little bit more because I'd like it to be a little bit wider, my bowl. And just if it starts crazing a little bit and starts cracking a bit, I have a bowl of water handy here. You can just tap your fingers in there and just run your fingers round there to stop it drying out. You don't want to leave any cracks in your bowl at all. As it dries out, if you've got a crack in it already, it gives it an excuse to widen that crack and cause a break while it's drying. Sometimes when you're working with ceramics, they do have a mind of their own. The clay being a natural product, you have to kind of be prepared for breakages along the way while it's drying, when it fires, when you glaze it. So it is a miracle sometimes when pieces come out. Don't want to discourage you, but you know, as long as you're aware that sometimes it does happen, when it does, it's very sad. It doesn't happen too often, You just have to have another go and just look at it as an opportunity for making another one. So I'm just going around there gently. My clay's relatively dryish at the moment. If it was really fresh off the block, it'd be quite wet and more pliable. So it's not too bad doing this. If it's really wet clay, you need to go very carefully that you don't squeeze too hard too soon, because if you make it the walls really thin rather than a bowl, you can end up with them flopping over and you end up with a flat plate. And at that point you kind of have to accept that you've made a plate rather than a bowl. Sometimes it's easiest just to go with the flow of the clay, and as I say, it can have a little bit mind of its own. So I'm just smoothing a bit as I go. You can see my fingerprints in the bottom there. Important, if you wanted that kind of an interesting texture actually to leave in the bottom of a dish, but if you want it smooth, it needs to be smoothed out. One thing that doesn't happen in the kiln is that clay does not smooth out. So it's not like putting biscuit mix or cake mix in the oven where it all smooths out and runs across the tin or the tray. Firing in our kiln or anybody else's kiln just generally dries the clay out. It reaches 558 degrees, the molecules change consistency in the makeup forever, and it'll never go back to being wet clay and pliable again. Up to that point, in theory, you can take it out of the kiln, add water and soften it and smooth it. But beyond that, the molecules have changed and it will be hard forever. So you've just got to work with it, as I say, really gently and slowly, and just go with the flow. So I hope you're having a nice day wherever you are watching this. You'll see from the date we're currently in lockdown number 3 in the UK in January 2021. I don't think we expected to start our year with that, so it's all been very interesting. So it's very nice and relaxing to be working with some clay and producing this. So it's getting a little bit deeper and a little bit wider, and I'm just working my thumbs across the base there just to smooth it out. I will use a sponge to do this shortly, but I don't want to wet my clay too much. And I'm just very conscious looking at the rim, so looking at the thickness of it going round there and just checking for cracks on the sides and just smoothing them over very gently. This reminds me at the moment of a pewter set my grandma used to have. It's all dimpled where they've beaten up the metal. So if you want a pewter effect, you could leave it like this. If you want a nice smooth bowl that you can paint on, then you will need to do a little bit of work. So I'm just smoothing out a little bit more. That base is quite good. It's nice and even. Sometimes if you feel your fingers going around here, you'll find where your corners, if it's got a very angular corner, if you want to soften it, just give it a bit of a squeeze with them, just screwing around like that. If I tilt it up, you can see a bit more. Squeezing in there very gently. Don't poke your fingers through it. You don't want a leaky bowl or a leaky cauldron. So just nice and gently, and just take your time. And I'm just going around there, just so if you've got fingernails, watch, because if you dig into the clay it leaves loads of marks and gives yourself added work to smooth out. Just is worth taking the time. I'm just going to turn it over a little bit. I just tap it like that on my board just to flatten that rim out, level it off a little bit. You do have to kind of go with the flow, as I say, except it is handmade. It is going to be a little bit uneven here and there, but one thing's for sure, there is not going to be another one anything like it anywhere in the world at all. So I'm just getting rid of some of the crazes, smoothing it off with my finger there. So you can dampen your finger, you can take a sponge, give it a really good squeeze out so it's only just lightly damp, and then just wipe it. It's worth taking your time on this process here, because, let's say, it's going to take a little while to smooth it out. I'm just going to go around there. Just keep going, gentle action all the way around. Just turn the sponge over a little bit if you need to. Keep the sponge nice and clean. And put some gentle pressure on. You see where my finger marks were. Gradually fading away. It's quite a different technique to making a bowl on a wheel. So just keep going gently like this. Just give that a squeeze out. There we go. See those bumps and lumps, so I'm just going to go. It's often helpful if you go in a different direction as well. Just keep changing the direction of the way you're rubbing, and then you'll catch all the